Welcome back. Let's revisit the night of January 29th, 2022, a night that began like so many others, but ended with the lifeless body of Boston police officer John O'Keefe in a snowbank.
It was a Saturday, a night for, socializing, for letting loose. John O'Keefe and his girlfriend, Karen Reed, were out with friends, hitting a couple of bars. First, C.F. McCarthy's, then the Waterfall Bar and Grill.
The group, some of whom were off-duty police officers, decided to continue the night at a house on Fairview Road.
A house belonging to Brian Albert, a retired Boston police officer himself.
All right.
Around midnight, Karen drove John to the residence. What happened after they arrived is where the clarity ends and the shadows begin. It's the heart of the mystery and what makes this case so disturbing.
The prosecution alleges that Karen dropped John off, made a three-point turn, and left, leaving him outside in a heavy snowstorm.
But the defense presents a starkly different picture. They claim Karen went back to the house later, frantically searching for John when he didn't return home. Phone records show multiple calls from Karen to John in the early morning hours, suggesting she was worried.
And the defense goes even further, introducing a theory that sends a chill down your spine. They claim John's fatal injuries weren't from being hit by a car, but from a vicious assault inside the Albert house.
Scratches on John's arms, the defense argues, suggest a struggle, maybe even an attack by a dog. This theory points a finger directly at those inside the house that night, suggesting a possible cover-up, made even more unsettling by the presence of off-duty police officers.
Of course, everyone present at the gathering denies this. The prosecution, meanwhile, brings forward evidence suggesting a hit-and-run. Red plastic fragments found at the scene that allegedly matched Karen's broken taillight.
But the defense counters claiming the crime scene was compromised, and the taillight pieces weren't discovered until after Karen's car was impounded. They allege that surveillance footage from the Canton Police Department Sallyport, where Karen's car was initially taken, was deliberately withheld. A potential treasure trove of information gone.
This brings us to another troubling aspect of the case. Trooper Michael Proctor, the lead investigator. His text messages revealed disparaging remarks about Karen, raising serious concerns about the impartiality of the investigation.
Proctor was relieved of duty, the subject of an internal investigation. A shadow hangs over the case, a shadow of doubt, of potential misconduct.
The first trial was a tense affair, a parade of witnesses, each offering their version of the truth. First responders, friends of John and Karen, those who were at the gathering, their testimonies were scrutinized, challenged, creating a tangled web of conflicting narratives.
The defense, in a dramatic move, tried to shift the blame away from Karen entirely. They called upon expert witnesses to bolster their claim that John's injuries were from a dog attack, not a car.
The prosecution, however, remained skeptical. They presented their own experts, arguing that there was no physical evidence, no blood, no signs of a struggle inside the Albert house.
And then the trial took another twist. Revelations of personal connections between some involved in the case came to light, including an alleged relationship between Trooper Proctor and a member of the Albert family.
The defense seized on this, arguing that it could have swayed the investigation against Karen. They pointed to inconsistencies in witness testimonies, raising concerns about the thoroughness of the initial investigation. Could crucial evidence have been overlooked or deliberately mishandled?
As the trial progressed, the defense continued to chip away at the prosecution's case, highlighting missing pieces, questioning motives, painting a picture of a flawed investigation, perhaps driven by a desire to protect those connected to law enforcement.
The prosecution, in their closing arguments, maintained that Karen was solely responsible for John's death. They pointed to the severity of his injuries, the evidence linking her car to the scene, and what they saw as inconsistencies in Karen's own account of that night.
But it wasn't enough. The jury remained divided, unable to reach a unanimous decision, a mistrial.
And so, we stand on the precipice of a second trial. Scheduled for April 1st, 2025, it promises to be just as closely watched, just as contentious as the first. Both sides vow to present even more evidence, more expert testimony. The search for justice, for the truth, continues.
The Karen Reed case is a chilling reminder of the darkness that can lurk beneath the surface of a seemingly ordinary night. It's a tangled web of conflicting stories, questionable evidence, and unsettling connections. It's a case that asks, what do you believe?
What do you think happened on that cold January night? Let us know your thoughts, your theories in the comments below.
The defense's focus on Trooper Proctor, the lead investigator, raises serious questions about the integrity of the entire investigation.
His text messages, filled with bias and disdain for Karen Reed, paint a disturbing picture. They make you wonder if his personal feelings influence his actions, if he was truly seeking the truth or pushing a narrative.
And the alleged connection between Proctor and the Albert family adds another layer of unease. If this friendship is true, could it have led to a tunnel vision, a rush to judgment against Karen?
The defense argues that it did, that those inside the house that night, including the off-duty police officers, had a motive to protect their own. And Proctor, with his ties to the Alberts, might have been complicit in that protection.
The defense also highlights the inconsistencies in witness testimonies. Those present at the gathering offer conflicting accounts of when Karen left, of whether John ever went inside. These discrepancies, the defense argues, point towards a coordinated effort to conceal the truth.
And then there's the issue of the physical evidence, or rather the handling of that evidence. The broken taillight fragments, allegedly from Karen's car, weren't found until after her vehicle was impounded. Why?
The defense suggests the crime scene was compromised, that the fragments could have been planted. They point to the missing surveillance footage from the Canton Police Department Sallyport, where Karen's car was initially taken. Could that footage have revealed the true condition of the vehicle that night?
The prosecution vehemently denies these allegations, of course. They maintain that the investigation was conducted by the book, that the evidence points squarely at Karen.
But the fact that the first trial ended in a mistrial speaks volumes. Clearly, some jurors had doubts. Doubts fueled by the defense's relentless focus on the flawed investigation, on the potential biases of those involved.
The Karen Reed case has become a morbid fascination for many. It's a story that's captured headlines, sparked heated debates online, and fueled a sense of distrust towards those sworn to protect and serve.
It echoes other high-profile cases where allegations of police misconduct, of cover-ups, have shaken public faith in the justice system.
As we inch closer to the retrial, the scrutiny will only intensify. Every piece of evidence, every word spoken on the stand, will be dissected by legal experts and armchair detectives alike.
The stakes are incredibly high. Karen Reed faces the possibility of a lengthy prison sentence if convicted. The O'Keefe family, still grappling with their loss, yearns for answers, for accountability.
The retrial will likely plunge us even deeper into the murky waters of this case. More evidence will be presented, more experts will be called upon, but will it bring us closer to the truth? Or will the mystery surrounding John O'Keefe's death only deepen?
We'll be here, dissecting each development, offering analysis and insight as the second trial unfolds. But we also want to hear from you.
What are your thoughts on this case? Do you believe Karen Reed is innocent? Or do you think the prosecution has enough to secure a conviction in the retrial? Let us know your theories, your insights in the comments below.
Now let's delve into the heart of the prosecution's case, the physical evidence found at the scene and the interpretations surrounding it.
Their theory hinges on the claim that Karen Reed hit John O'Keefe with her vehicle, causing the fatal injuries.
They point to those red plastic fragments found near John's body, the ones they allege match the broken taillight on Karen's SUV.
If proven to be a definitive match, this evidence would deal a significant blow to the defense's claim that Karen wasn't involved in a vehicular incident that night.
Adding to this, the prosecution presented evidence of John O'Keefe's DNA on those recovered taillight fragments, seemingly solidifying the link between Karen's vehicle and the tragedy.
However, the defense contests the integrity of this evidence. They claim the crime scene was mishandled, that the fragments might have been planted or tampered with after Karen's car was taken into custody.
The chain of custody, they argue, is suspect. Were there opportunities for those fragments to be moved, manipulated, contaminating the scene?
It's also noteworthy that the initial police investigation didn't find those taillight fragments. They were only discovered after Karen's vehicle was impounded and scrutinized more closely.
This fuels the defense's suspicions about the thoroughness, the objectivity of the initial investigation. Was it rushed, influenced by preconceived notions?
Adding another layer to this complex puzzle, the defense has brought in their own expert witnesses to challenge the prosecution's interpretations.
They contend that John's injuries don't align with a low-speed impact from a vehicle.
Instead, their experts suggest the nature and severity of the injuries point towards a physical assault, or perhaps a fall.
The red plastic fragments, they argue, might not have come from Karen's vehicle at all. They could have come from another source, from the debris often found in that area.
The defense emphasizes the lack of other damage to Karen's SUV. No dents, no scratches, the kind you'd expect in a collision.
If Karen had hit John with her car, wouldn't there be more evidence of that impact? More damage to her vehicle?
The prosecution counters by emphasizing the presence of John O'Keefe's DNA on those taillight fragments. It's a connection that's difficult to dismiss.
They also bring in witness testimonies that place Karen at the scene, corroborating their timeline of events.
But the defense, ever vigilant, points to inconsistencies in those very testimonies. They question the reliability of some witnesses, particularly those connected to law enforcement.
The battle over the physical evidence and its interpretation is at the very heart of this case. Both sides present compelling arguments, weaving together expert opinions and forensic analysis to support their claims.
Remember, the first jury couldn't reach a unanimous decision based on what was presented. It resulted in a mistrial, setting the stage for the upcoming retrial.
The retrial will likely see both sides bringing even more evidence to the table, calling upon even more experts. They'll be battling to sway the jury, to convince them of their version of events.
In the end, it all comes down to what the jury believes. Their assessment of the physical evidence, its significance within the context of that fateful night, will determine the course of this case.
The Karen Reed case is a chilling example of the complexities of forensic science. It underscores the critical importance of a thorough, unbiased investigation.
It's a reminder that reconstructing events from fragmented evidence is a difficult task, prone to conflicting interpretations, and potentially clouded by human error.
The search for truth in the Karen Reed case continues, and the upcoming retrial will be a pivotal step in that quest.
We'll continue to dissect the details, offering insights and analysis as the case unfolds. But for now, we want to hear from you.
Do you find the prosecution's case compelling? Or do you have doubts about the reliability of the physical evidence presented?
Let's continue this conversation together. Let's peel back the layers of this perplexing and tragic case and see if we can get closer to the truth. As this case moves towards a retrial, it's a stark reminder of how much weight rests on the concept of reasonable doubt.
Yeah, the defense's strategy will likely revolve around amplifying those doubts, picking apart the prosecution's case piece by piece.
Right.
Highlighting inconsistencies, suggesting alternative scenarios, and ultimately trying to convince the jury that Karen Reed's guilt hasn't been proven beyond a reasonable doubt.
They'll continue to push their theory that John's death was not the result of a hit and run, that the fatal injuries happened inside the Albert house,
Right.
possibly during a violent struggle.
Expect them to revisit the physical evidence, bringing in experts to challenge the DNA analysis, the interpretation of the taillight fragments, and the very nature of John's injuries.
Their goal is to create a narrative that paints Karen Reed as a victim of circumstance, not a perpetrator of a crime. A narrative where those present at the gathering, and perhaps even the lead investigator, had motives to obscure the truth.
The prosecution, however, will be working to solidify their case. They'll likely present a meticulous timeline backed up by witness testimonies they deem credible.
Their focus will be on presenting a clear, cohesive picture of events with Karen Reed at the center of it all.
Yeah.
They'll undoubtedly emphasize the DNA evidence linking Karen's vehicle to the scene. They'll call upon witnesses who place her at the scene, corroborating their timeline, and they'll rely on their experts to reinforce their theory of a hit and run.
They'll also be tasked with countering the defense's allegations of a cover-up of misconduct by the lead investigator. They'll need to convince the jury that the investigation was thorough, unbiased, and that the evidence against Karen Reed is solid.
This retrial won't just be about legal arguments and forensic evidence. It will be about the immense emotional weight that this case carries.
The O'Keefe family will be present, carrying the heavy burden of grief, seeking a verdict that brings them some sense of justice for their loss. And Karen Reed will be there, facing the possibility of losing her freedom, fighting to clear her name.
It's a high-stakes situation, one that demands a jury capable of setting aside emotions, of filtering out the noise, and focusing solely on the facts presented.
The outcome of this retrial is impossible to predict with certainty. Both sides have compelling arguments, and the weight of the evidence seems to shift with each new revelation.
As we wait for this next chapter to unfold, one thing is clear. The Karen Reed case has touched a nerve. It's a story that sparked conversations about trust, about accountability, about the potential for darkness to hide within the systems we rely upon.
It's a story that forces us to confront uncomfortable questions about the justice system, about the complexities of truth-seeking, and about the very human fallibility of those entrusted to uphold the law.
The Karen Reed case is a tragic reminder of how quickly life can veer off course, how a seemingly ordinary night can end in irreparable loss.
It's a case that has left a trail of heartbreak, unanswered questions, and a lingering sense of unease.
As we wrap up this look into the case, we urge you to continue thinking critically about the information presented.
Consider the evidence, the arguments, the motives. What resonates with you? What doubts linger in your mind?
Let us know your thoughts, your theories, your predictions for the retrial in the comments. Let's keep this conversation going because sometimes the most unsettling cases are the ones that stay with us long after the headlines fade.